Welcome to Spotlight on Schools, a program that focuses on the Rochester City School District. I'm your host, Jim Strauss. Tonight our guest is Dr. Robin Hooper, Executive Director of the Rochester City School District's Department of Early Childhood. Welcome, Dr. Hooper.
Oh, thank you.
I'd like to discuss what the Early Childhood Program is and why it's so important for kids. But first, I'd like for you to tell us a little about yourself.
Well, I was a teacher for about 13 years, 5 of those in the Rochester City School District. And then I served as a building administrator for 8 years until about 2008. And for the past 4 years, I've been the executive director of the Early Childhood Department.
Mm-hmm. Now, you have a PhD, and what is that area?
I actually have a doctorate in education, so it's an EDD from the University of Rochester. And my focus was on program evaluation, and my dissertation focused on the evaluation of a professional development program for preschool teachers based on curriculum.
I see. Okay. Over the last several months on this program, educators have pointed out that the achievement gap between children of the urban poor and those of other segments of the population begins to widen at a very early age, well before kindergarten. With that in mind, in what ways is a quality pre-kindergarten experience so important for children in Rochester?
Well, it's important in many ways. Certainly for academics and for language development, exposure to a wide array of vocabulary and background experiences, but it's also important for social aspects, learning how to work with others in a group, learning how to work with other children who are the same age. Most children, if they have not experienced a child care setting, have not been in a group of children their own age, such as they have when they enter kindergarten. Also for health reasons. Through the schools, we do screening, we make referrals. If a child needs a referral to go on for more evaluation or for a pediatrician to follow up. There are a variety of things that we cover in the program. And really having that experience, having access to different materials and different things that are provided in the program, such as field trips, all combine to make it a rich educational experience for our young children.
Okay. The pre-kindergarten program has adopted the High Scope program. Can you briefly describe that? Yes.
The High Scope preschool curriculum has been around since the 1960s. And most of the long-term studies that you hear, such as the PreK preschool project, were based on the High Scope curriculum. So it's had a long history of research base and is one of the few, if the only curriculum that I know of that has longitudinal data to support it. So that's why we selected it after a year-long adoption process where we piloted for 3 other curricula. Mm-hmm. But the program really focuses on, for the student, what they call the plan, do, review process. And that takes place during the child's work time, which is in the learning centers. Children plan as a small group with their teacher or with the teaching assistant or paraprofessional in the classroom what they will do during their work time. And this usually is it takes maybe 10 to 15 minutes at the most. And then the children go and engage in their work time activities. They could be in the block area, the housekeeping or dramatic play area, the book area, the art area. We have, designated work areas in the classroom for the children to pick from.
Now, Jose, would you do me a favor? Would you look at our center side and see where would you like to work today? And what is the name of it?
Blocks.
Blocks. You may go and look in blocks.
And they go there to enact their plans, and they have about, almost an hour of work time. They can change their plans. The teacher may come up and ask them if they've left that area and gone to a different work area. Did you want to change your plan, or are you going to get ready to do a new plan? And they'll follow the child over there and talk with them and help them plan as they go if needed. Mm-hmm. Then they come back to the small group, the same small group that they planned in, and they do the review portion, where they review what each child did. A child may talk about what they did during their work time, Or if a child is not as verbal, a peer may be called upon to share what that child did or to help them. And we use a variety of props to help the children do this. Sometimes it's a game format. Sometimes I've seen teachers use game boards with a little train or a car with the work areas on a kind of a map that they use on the table. And they might move that little car around to show where they're going to go for their work time.
Now, does that help to chart their progress as well?
Well, that wouldn't be what we use to chart their progress, but it is used to engage the children because they're stimulated by that. Another tactic that we've used, or another prop, is a telescope. Can you take the telescope, look through the telescope, and show us where you're going to work today, and then describe what you're going to do? Mm-hmm. So there are all kinds of activities we use in the planning and even in the reviewing to engage the children, to make it more stimulating, to elicit more verbal response from them. Mm-hmm. And sometimes when the children begin, they may not provide a lot of verbalization. They may begin just by pointing to the area. So we try to develop that, and we do see that children develop more and more complex plans as they get more accustomed to this planning and reviewing process.
Okay, I see 6 areas that I went to their website, and the 6 areas were initiative, which you're talking about, the planning, social relations, creative representation, movement and music, language and literacy, and mathematics and science. Pretty impressive. Now, I've also been reading about this PreK study, that some of the results were not necessarily academic, but non-cognitive things. That the results of the longitudinal study later on in the years, they were engaged in less risky behavior, were more likely to graduate from high school, involved less involved, for example, in the criminal justice system, were less likely to become pregnant. That was quite a study as I read more and more about that. There's a lot of hope for that.
And those are important aspects, as I was saying.
No kidding.
I think we could all point to people that we know in society who are very intelligent, perhaps very accomplished and skilled, but without perhaps the prerequisite social skills, really can't put those other skills to use. So
now, this high scope, as I understand it, this aligns with the New York State pre-K to 12 standards.
Yes, and our Board of Regents just adopted a new version of the pre-kindergarten standards that were added to the Common Core standards. So the pre-K version of the Common Core, and High Scope is working now, and they've given me the preliminary results of that alignment, because that was just adopted this year in 2012. I believe it may have been the January Board of Regents meeting, or close around the turn of the year from 2011 to 2012. So they are in alignment, and what they actually align are the key developmental indicators of the high scope curriculum to the standards, because those are the premises upon which the curriculum is based.
Okay, we are at the end of our first segment, so when we come back, I want to talk about the assessment of your program. Stay tuned, we'll be right back with Spotlight on Schools. Welcome back to Spotlight on Schools. We're talking with Dr. Robin Hooper, the Executive Director of the Rochester City School District's Department on Early Childhood. I'd like to ask you, how have the assessments been of your pre-K program?
Well, we've been very pleased with our assessments. We've been using the ECHRS, which is the Early Childhood Environmental Rating Scale, to assess our program classroom by classroom. Every classroom is assessed each year. And overall, the scores have been very good. On a scale of 1 to 7, that's the ECHRS program evaluation scale, we have been scoring about 6.1 for a period of several years. We've been using the assessment for about a decade.
And that compares you to other states and also Western Europe, as I understand.
Yes.
And you, in comparison?
We are at the very top. If 7 is the highest that you can achieve, and we've been consistently achieving over 6, we know that we're in the upper echelon of pre-K programs.
Mm-hmm. And according to the RECAP, which is the Rochester Early Childhood Assessment Partnership, you've been moving your kids along. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, every year we assess the students using the Child Observation Record, which is a high scope assessment at the beginning of the year and at the end of the year to show growth. And we do find that our children make at least a year growth overall, and often a year and a half worth of growth during that 10-month period that they're in the pre-K program. So we're pleased with their rate of growth. We also do evaluate their social-emotional functioning, and we're required to by New York State at the pre-K level. And we use an instrument called the Teacher-Child Rating Scale, which we also administer in the fall and in the spring, to measure social-emotional growth and development. And that is nationally normed. That was a locally developed instrument that we have through our work with Children's Institute, a nonprofit organization.
So in 10 months' time, you move them a year to a year and a half again ahead, so that helps to close that achievement gap.
Yes.
Good news.
So we're pleased with that. The one gap that we're working hard to close that we see most frequently is the gender gap. Girls consistently perform at a higher level than the boys at the pre-kindergarten level. And we are working on ways to better meet boys' needs, to better engage them, to try to lessen that gap.
Is that beyond what would be expected developmentally?
Well, it's hard to say, because in the research we do find that girls typically develop much more quickly, particularly in the verbal skills.
Yes.
And that's what most academic measurement focuses on. And we do see that boys are more likely to engage in active learning, activities that pair movement with learning, music with learning. So we're trying to use more strategies that target those types of activities that boys are more likely to get engaged in.
Those are age-old
yes.
differences, especially at that age. Well, I'd like to move on to staffing. What are the certification requirements for your teachers and aides?
Well, the teachers are all required to be fully certified, and that means that they have completed a bachelor's program and a master's program in teaching, and that you know, they have to continually keep up their professional development hours. Teachers who have the new certification for early childhood, which covers the ages of birth through grade 2. So they are very qualified, and that's in our schools and in our agencies. And a teacher who has completed their bachelor's degree and is still working on the master's is provisionally certified. They become they get their professional certification when they've completed the master's.
Which is just like any teacher at any other level.
Yes.
Okay.
Ready? Open your bag.
I did.
Wait a second.
I did before.
I didn't feel.
1, 2, 3. I'm gonna give everybody 3 seeds and a magnifying glass. 3 seeds and a magnifying glass. Wow, it makes it look big. You can look at your seeds. Your hand is big. Wow,
How about you look at big?
I'm big.
Look at
Now everybody look at your seeds. Use your magnifying glass and look at your seeds.
I really looked at mine.
You are right.
All right, pick another letter.
Pretty cool.
So you pick a Q for Quran. Look at it. Does it have straight lines, curved lines, or straight and curved lines?
Straight across.
Show me the straight line. Yeah, so you have to put it right over
Baby,
there.
look at.
Good job, Tash. All right, find another letter.
Baby, look at.
It's very nice.
Hurry, no,
What letter do you have? And for Naomi, yeah. Look at it. Does it have straight lines, curved lines, or straight and curved lines?
All right, and your student-to-teacher, student-to-staff ratio?
We are required to meet the regulations for universal pre-K. So we have a teacher and a teaching assistant or paraprofessional for every 18 students in a classroom.
A teacher or?
Well, in our schools, we have a teacher and a paraprofessional. In our agencies, we often have a teacher and sometimes a teaching assistant.
Now, when you say agency, I'm not sure what you mean.
Well, we partner partner with community-based organizations
Okay.
to provide the preschool program. We contract with them, and they attend our training. They receive other types of support from the district, and those are district programs as well as our schools. So approximately half of our students attend programs at our school sites, and the other half of our students attend programs at our agency sites.
I think that leads me to my next question. When I downloaded the pre-K booklet from the City School District website, and I went to the table of contents, I counted them last night, 54 pre-K programs listed in the area. 27 were at schools, 4 were at YMCAs, 5 were Head Start programs. List included several daycare centers, several child care facilities, at least 2 church-sponsored facilities, and a number of community centers. So these are all your agencies?
Yes.
Okay. So how do you folks do coordinate this?
Oh yes, we're as responsible for the program in our agencies as we are in our schools. And we're actually required by law to collaborate with at least 10% of our program has to be in agencies.
I see. And so all of these organizations use the High Scope program?
Yes.
I see.
They're district-wide, we use High Scope, and we actually have collaborated with Head Start through the adoption process and the implementation process, which I think is very exciting because here in Rochester, all of our children attending Universal Pre-K and Head Start are involved in the High Scope preschool curriculum.
Okay. My next question was about Head Start. Head Start is a program that focuses on poverty.
Yes.
It reaches, and it's administered in Rochester through the Action for a Better Community, ABC, and this is federal funds. Their website, well, it reaches down, the focus of it reaches down to earlier ages. It focuses on health, nutrition, and the home, getting people into the home. A lot of prenatal care, a lot of toddler care. You'd mentioned earlier about the health you're interested. I assume you get involved perhaps in vision testing, hearing testing, things like that?
Oh yes, we are required to do screening of hearing, vision, motor skills, cognitive skills, social-emotional skills as part of the new entrant screening requirements that are mandated for us to follow, Part 117 of the Commissioner's regulations. And we do all of that as children enter within the first 90 days of school. So from there, through this screening process, we're able to identify children who may possibly be gifted or may possibly have a disability, and then we can refer them for further evaluation.
Okay, what about the area of nutrition?
Nutrition is not something that we would evaluate other than in the health area. It is something that we would cover as part of our curriculum, teaching children about, healthy eating habits. We also teach self-help skills and washing hands and those kinds of daily living skills that children need to learn at a young age. And we partner with Head Start in a lot of our work, and a lot of our students that go to Head Start are also in UPK. So there's some overlap. They are one of our community-based organizations. Okay,
I've seen on your website that you have a number of children in the Rochester City School District who are 3 years old.
Yes.
So can you tell me briefly, we have very little time in this
segment. In the early childhood department, we're also responsible for special education for preschool. And preschoolers are able to come to the preschool program at our blended classrooms at 3 years of age. We also have a limited number of programs in our general education program for preschool for 3-year-olds.
Okay. So, do you see that expanding down the road?
I would love it if it would expand, particularly in the general education program. However, there's no funding provided for that from the state or federal government to the school district.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll pause in this segment and we'll come back and, and talk about numbers. So stay tuned. Welcome back to Spotlight on Schools. We're talking to Robin Hooper, Executive Director of the Rochester City School District's Department of Early Childhood. We've just been talking about the special needs program. It is the Smart Start program. I was reading about that last night, and apparently, according to what I read, that a parent may initiate that. All they have to do is write a letter Now, I also assume that as your staff identifies needs, what happens then? Do they contact the parent?
Yes, the first course of action for a staff member who believes that a child might have a disability or a learning problem or even a physical problem would be to speak with the parent. And to talk to them, to find out what have they seen at home, have they observed the same things that that staff member is seeing, do they have concerns? Because sometimes a simple conversation with the parent can clear up a lot. They may say, oh, he's been having some ear infections lately, and I've noticed that he hasn't been responding when I call his name, and that may be just a simple fix of taking the child back to the pediatrician, having the ears checked, so on and so forth. So that's always our first course of action, is to talk with the parent.
One of the results I was reading in one of the books that has been recommended to me, that at a quality pre-K program, it results in fewer special ed diagnoses.
Yes.
Getting into kindergarten and beyond. Okay, let's talk about numbers. You told me last week that your pre-K program reported 1,988 four-year-olds earlier this year.
Yes.
What percentage do you think of four-year-olds in the city are not reached?
Well, I would say that that's a very difficult thing to get a grasp on. But in general, we have about 2,000 3-year-old or 4-year-olds in the Rochester City School District's Universal Pre-K program, and then another 400 that are in Head Start only programs that don't include UPK. So there you have a total of about 2,400 students who are 4 years old. And in kindergarten, we have typically about 2,700. So there may be some children attending private preschool programs. There may be some children that are not attending preschool at home. But I would say we are getting the majority of children in our preschool programs here in Rochester.
My last guest on the last program was Tim Maines, principal school number 50.
Yes.
He said that roughly 30% of his incoming kindergartners have not had pre-K. He reported that since he's been there for 10 years, that percentage has reversed. He said only 30% had pre-K 10 years ago, so obviously that's getting better. So how do you go about finding these children who will be 4?
Well, you know, we do everything we possibly can, because another factor that I didn't mention is the mobility. We live in an urban area, people move in, people move out. So we do have a very aggressive ad campaign. We advertise on all the local channels, we advertise in print media, we advertise on our own website, and we've expanded into other web advertising. We have a whole year-long calendar of promotional events that we attend and go to, our staff that we bring information to and recruit for the program. And those are just a few of the things. We also do bring things to the promotional events, like those reusable grocery bags with our logo and our information on them, so that when people carry them, they're advertising our program. At the beginning of the year, last year, and we're looking to do this again in the fall of 2012, we distributed backpacks to our pre-K children that advertised our program with our main phone number and website on the backpack. So we use a variety of means, but word of mouth has been our best advertisement. We've surveyed our parents, and about 50% of our parents every year say that they found out about our program through other parents. And that's your best advertisement.
In your experience, what difficulties keep some people from enrolling their children?
Well, some of the things that make it difficult for parents are the fact that we can only afford to provide in our district, with the funding we receive, a half-day pre-K program for every child, which is about 2.5 hours long. Some parents need a full-day program, and that is why we have partnered with agencies. They typically can provide wraparound care for the other portion of the day if the parent needs a full-day program. And this is another way we've found that we were able to increase our preschool enrollment. Another obstacle that parents sometimes encounter is of the lack of transportation. Preschool transportation is extremely expensive, more expensive than school-age transportation.
Why is that?
Well, because you have to have car seats and bus monitors, which are very expensive. And you can only put 2 children in a bus seat when they have to sit in a car seat. So it takes up more room on a bus. So there are factors like that that make it cost prohibitive for us. And so what we've done as a strategy to circumvent that and to make it more accessible to parents is to try to have programs in every part of the city scattered in such a way that they are, you know, accommodate our population where our highest needs are, and so that we have a pre-K program almost in every part of the city within walking distance of any neighborhood. So that's been our strategy.
I see. Now I see that the zones are divided northeast, northwest, and south. Now the city, the ones that are in schools are by lottery. Am I right?
Yes.
Whereas the agencies, it's by location?
Or it's first come, first serve.
Okay.
They're often children that are already there for childcare.
Okay. And if they're there for childcare, it's pretty much automatic. When they hit that age, they're going to be involved in.
They ask the parent to register. The parent still has to go through all the steps of registering the child, but most parents seem to realize that it's a good thing to have their child in the program and are eager to do so.
Are there any emotional or behavioral or cultural issues that sometimes keep a parent, let's say, from entering his or her child in?
I haven't seen any. Now, sometimes there are parents who are concerned that their child isn't ready yet. And I recall a parent that shared that with us this year, and what we told her, and this is what we typically tell parents, why don't you try it? Come and visit. Bring your child for a few days. See how it goes. And after that, if you still are concerned, you know, we can look at some other avenues, but we typically find that they are very comfortable and decide to enroll the child. And that's what this parent did this year that I'm thinking of. And I really wish I could get her to speak to other parents to tell them, you know, they don't have to be quite so nervous about it. Their child will be all right. And actually, the children, when they first come, may be a little nervous about separating from the parent. After about 2 weeks, when the parent comes to pick them up, they don't want to leave. They don't want to stop playing with their friends.
All right, we've got about a minute and a half, so we're coming to the end of our program. There may be some parent who's watching right now who's on the fence about whether or not to sign up her son or daughter for pre-K. What do you tell her about why that child needs to go, and who that parent should contact, and how that contact should be made? You're talking to that parent right now, and there's your camera.
Well, I would say, please give your child the best educational advantage that you can by enrolling them in a pre-K program, either at age 3 or at age 4. And you can do that by calling this number, 262-8140. You can find additional information on our website at www.rcsdk12.org/pre-K.
Thank you very much for coming, Dr. Hooper. We've been talking with Dr. Robin Hooper, Executive Director of the Rochester City School District's Department of Early Childhood. Tune in next month for another installment of Spotlight on Schools. I'm Jim Strauss. Good night.
Let's go home.